Can you say his first name again, Michael?
His first name is Arrow, like bow and arrow. Isn't that correct, Arrow?
That would be right. And radio people didn't want me to use that name because it was too close to Harold.
And Arrow, here, I'm wearing the other shirt now.
Oh, man, dude, you're such a child.
Here is Brigadier General Paul Greg Smith. He goes by Greg Smith, and you have 20 minutes.
Greg, let me ask you that question. I mean, with calling yourself Greg Smith, I mean, I know what that role is like to become Arrow Collins. What do you have to fit into that role also?
Which role is that, Arrow?
The role of you becoming Greg the writer. That's what everybody knows you as. So therefore, I mean, so it's not every day that I get to meet somebody who gets to be someone else in their life. It's like a different chapter.
I get to be lots of things. You know what I love, Arrow, is in the old days when I was a brigadier general, I'm retired, but I'd come home from this massive operation in South America or in Boston or wherever. I'd get home and I'd get out of the car and I'd sort of drop my duffel bag, and my wife would say, "Hey, General,
Ooh.
That trash is stacking up in the barn. I think somebody needs to take care of it, General." So she was wonderful at cramming my ego back into my Red Sox baseball cap.
Oh, my God. That's like my wife. She looked at me one day and she says, don't give me any of your DJ radio crap because I know people more famous than you. And I was like, oh, my God.
That's beautiful.
Well, I want to thank you for your dedication to this nation, because without your leadership, I can't imagine where the mind, body, and souls of so many men and women would have been led to.
Well, Arrow, thank you, but it was really an honor to be able to serve in the positions that I served in, and I mean that.
Wow.
I was the lucky one.
Well, as you explain in your book, though, that one of the things that really stands out is that my brother was in the National Guard. He served our nation in the Guard in the early part of the 1970s during the Vietnam War. It's not the same National Guard as it was back then. I mean, what they expect today, oh my God, it's almost like you're world keepers.
Can I tell a quick story?
Please.
So I came through ROTC.
Yep.
And of course, most of my colleagues went into the regular Army. I went in the National Guard because I wanted to be a special ed teacher. There were sort of two vocations tugging at me. My biggest military experience was with the 82nd Airborne Division at Fort Bragg.
Yes.
All of a sudden, I'm in the Massachusetts National Guard. We're at our first summer camp at Fort Drum. So I've got my platoon, and we're laying out our defense. We're digging in the machine gun. We're plotting artillery fires, all of the mechanics of setting up a good defense. All of a sudden, I hear this whistle. My guys jump up and go racing to the command post headquarters. The weapons are on the ground, the wire's sitting there, the machine gun's all by itself. I'm like, what the heck? And I follow him, and there is the first sergeant, and he whips off this tarp, and it's a trailer full of ice and beer.
No.
And it's cocktail hour. And I'm scratching my head saying, where the hell am I?
Yeah.
The National Guard in the 1970s and 80s ran on as much beer as they did diesel fuel. But part of the reason that I wrote the book and what I wanted to get across, Americans should be tremendously proud of the National Guard as an organization, because it picked itself up, transformed, and matured from this kind of Keystone Cop silliness into what I call America's Swiss Army knife, where today guardsmen staff clinics, drive school buses.
That's it.
They take over elder care. They pull people out of floodwaters. And then 2 weeks later, they get the call and they strap on their body armor, they pick up their weapons, and they go overseas and they fight. And that's a tremendous versatility, flexibility that institution now is able to provide to the American people that 30 years ago it couldn't think about.
We in the very beginning. In the very beginning, we talked about how, the different personalities and stuff when you change your name. But what about these men and women who serve the National Guard who've got to change their life? Like you said, you're a special ed teacher. How do you drop that persona of your life, that dedication, that loyalty and determination, and then all of a sudden go serve the nation? To me, anybody who serves this nation is a working machine. How do you turn it on and off?
So, Arrow, that's the interesting point, and therein lies the strength of the National Guard. I used to work for a general who said, when you get a guardsman, you get two professionals.
Yeah.
And that's so true, that they are mothers and fathers. They're mechanics. They're truck drivers. They're nurses. They're teachers. They don't leave that behind. When they go on duty in uniform, those skills are still there.
Mm-hmm.
That's why the National Guard is so effective in dealing with emergency and disaster responses, because they're citizens as well as soldiers. They understand they can empathize with the people who are being victimized in that situation. You know what they're really good at? They're really good at riot control.
Yes.
For that reason.
Mm-hmm.
I remember my first riot. 9 days into it, it turned into a love fest. I remember when it was all over, the strikers 6 months later sent an invitation to the armory inviting the soldiers to their Christmas party. But the first night, it was ugly.
Man, we had a riot here in Charlotte a couple of years back, and I'll tell you what, sure, the media was doing their job, getting right there in the middle of it all, but is it all like that? You being in the center of that, and I think that was one of my draws to this book, because I don't know what it's like to be in a situation of chaos.
I'm sorry, Arrow, to laugh, but maybe that's what we did best in the 70s and 80s was chaos.
Ooh, yeah.
No. I remember that riot experience quite well. And I was young. But it was really the first time in my life that I saw the face of somebody who really wanted to kill me.
Oh, God.
But it was ugly. But the interesting thing is, across the 9 days that we were on site for that civil disturbance, guardsmen managed to form a human connection with the rioters, so that by the end, people were like sitting down, sharing lunches, actually sharing a case of beer at one point. I remember I came around the bushes and caught my guy sitting in the grass drinking beer with the rioters.
Oh, my God.
And I said, oh, my God, I can't let this happen. And then I stepped back and said, the mission is to keep peace here. That's about as peaceful as it gets. I think I'm going to keep my mouth shut.
I know so many educators in the Charlotte-Mecklenburg school system that do ROTC. Isn't this book also for them, and that they should be sharing this book with those students? Because so many of them go in there for I don't want to say the wrong reasons, but they're not really healthy in the head and heart, and they need some direction. And a book like this really is a good pointer.
Arrow, it's interesting you say that, because I've been sending it out to ROTC professors. It's not a leadership handbook. Mm-hmm. It's not, me saying, do what I did because these are the moves. No, quite the opposite. I'm telling you, I fell flat on my face. Don't do what I did. And then later on, maybe think about some of these things. But yeah, and part of the book also is when I joined the National Guard, I was 50% knucklehead.
Yeah.
And I made a lot of mistakes. The message there is that maybe you screw up in your life and you fall down. But you know what? You got a good heart and you got drive. You can still finish the race strong. Mm-hmm. I don't want to brag, but I came out of this as a general. So, I must have learned something.
But you've got to love that discipline, though, because I know even as a third-degree black belt, the discipline that we are trained with it sticks with you forever. And you being the son of one of the greatest generations, oh my God, that discipline, they came with discipline. Our parents did.
Well, I'm sorry if I can tell another story.
Please.
In ROTC, I had a mentor. He was actually part of Delta Force, and we didn't know it. I didn't know it until he died. But anyway, I was at ROTC down at Fort Bragg, and I wasn't doing well. And he came up to me. He said, "Hey, Greg, how are you?" And I said, "Oh, Sarge, they're riding me hard. I can't do anything right." And he's like, come here. You want to fix them?" And I said, yeah. Tell me how to fix them. He says, "Well, I'll tell you the secret." He said, "Lean in." And he yelled in my ear.
Oh, God.
He said, "Don't mess up." Only he didn't say mess, but I can't say that word on the radio. You know what? Through 40 years, that stuck with me. That whenever I felt like I was on the ropes, when I felt like I was defeated, when I felt like the enemy was too great to overcome, I realized that the only solution is to bear down, work harder, be tougher, don't whine, and don't make mistakes. And oh, by the way, at Fort Bragg, I did exactly that. And the big bad platoon sergeant left me alone. He went and picked on somebody else. It worked. But I never, ever forgot that the way to win is to beat them at their own game by being tougher. But yeah, I mean, that's what being in the military is about. That's what that guy gave to me. By the way, I hold him in my heart. Sergeant Al Drapo, unfortunately, he's no longer alive, but a hero to me.
Speaking of people, Corporal Harris has found a place inside your book as well.
Corporal Harris. Tell me about Corporal Harris.
Something about that. The one thing that I read about it, and I wanted to talk about it because a jokester that Corporal Harris had an issue, and it was like, okay, so how do you deal with other people that you're serving with that have these issues, especially with your background in special education, because you come in there with people skills, understanding the ups and downs and the unexpected, and then you get someone like a Corporal Harris who's going to add something to your day.
So, Arrow, let me just tell you why I'm a little quizzical. I could only use the real names of people in my book who gave me permission.
Okay.
So the person that you are referring to is a euphemism, which is why I was lost a little bit. So this is a person who was crossing boundaries around. Crossing sexual boundaries with one of the first women in our platoon. And the point of the matter is that as a leader, we lead by inspiration, by motivation, by calling on people's better angels. But what I had to learn is that sometimes when people screw up, you need to ball your fist and you need to smack them in the head. And I'm sorry, maybe I'm not supposed to say that on the air, but that was a really good example. The problem was I didn't do it fast enough, and I lost that young lady because she never should have had to put up with that from him. But that was part of what I learned is that, motivation, inspiration, appealing to people's better nature is the best way to form a team and to get the best out of people. But you know what? When somebody's not listening and you give them plenty of chances to listen, sometimes you need to just, tough love's important.
Yep.
And the other thing is that the organization is looking to you to enforce standards and set limits, and that's part of the job.
Mike Rowe is known for doing the dirty jobs, and the thing is that one of the things that I'm so inspired by you as an officer, you were put on lunchbox duty. I kind of chuckled when I heard that, because all of a sudden that keeps you down to the ground with the real Joe.
Loved it. Yep. When I was an assistant principal, I used to love the 45 minutes that I get to spend talking to kids and watching them eat. I learned, you know what, Arrow? I learned so much about what was happening in classrooms from what kids would talk about at lunch. It was fun. But that's not it. Did I write about that in the book?
Yes, you did. Otherwise, I wouldn't know anything about it. I mean, that.
Well, I suppose. How would you know that? Right. You know what? You're probably saying, did this guy read his own book?
So where can people go to find out more about you, General, or Greg? Where would you like people to go to find out more about you? So that, because I love your stories. I love them. To me, it's Americana, and it's just a piece of history that we cannot ever forget.
So Arrow, I guess that the point is, just read the book, because there are no secrets in there. I have to tell you, my son's fiance said to me at one point. Now, this young lady is about to marry into the family, and I've only met her a few times. She says to me at one point, "Nick, let me read your book.
Yeah.
Did you really have a machete that you were going to go into a fight with?" And I said, "Ooh, maybe I shouldn't have put that part in the book."
Oh, my God. Please come back to this show anytime in the future. The door is always going to be open for you.
Oh, Arrow, this was fun, and I'm working on another book, and when that one's done, Arrow, I definitely will be back.
Well, one of your books has to be How to Survive the Southern Heat in North Carolina when you're at Fort Bragg.
Oh, heavens, I think about that a lot. The next one, though, is about my adventures in South America.
Oh, God.
That was a really interesting time.
Oh, wow. Oh, I can't wait for that. Okay, I'm going to book you then. We got to get together and talk again.
Then I better get writing.
Okay, buddy. Well, you have a brilliant day today, okay?
Yeah. Thanks, Arrow. This was fun.